Restaurant at the End of the Universe by Douglas Adams. It is the sequel to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I did do that book, and this is part 2 of the sequel. So, if you've already watched my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reading, then by all means, continue on this way. I recommend watching the first video to this so you're caught up in the book. But yes, anyway, without further ado, please go back and watch it. It was fun. There was a lot of laughing. I was laughing by myself in my room. It was great. I love escaping to books. They're my favorite, and that's one of the reasons why I started this channel. I know I'm about to do a rant. I know. I'm sorry. I love books. Ever since I was a kid, it was like always my favorite thing. So when I moved, I didn't bring a TV. I was like, I'm just going to dedicate as much of my free time as I can to reading books. So even when I'm not reading books on here, sometimes I'll be reading a book on here and reading separate books in my free time because I need it. Like, I'm also, when I work, because I'm a delivery driver, I listen to Red Rising, which is pretty sick. My boss told me about it. But yeah, so I'm a big book person. So if you're also a bookie like me, let's get on with it, right? Anyway, where was I? I was beginning to think you'd never turn the lights on, said a voice. No, not too bright, please. My eyes aren't what they once were. 4 figures jolted upright in their seats. And yes, I do a lot of British voices because, it's very British. Okay, I did the same thing with Good Omens. Don't worry, I have other voices, but for these specific books, they're very British. So get over it. I have a good Scottish one too. Anyway. Sorry, I'm rambling today. 4 figures jolted upright in their seats. Slowly they turned their heads to look, though their scalps showed a distinct propensity to try and stay in the same place. Now, who disturbs me at this time? Said the small, bent, gaunt figure standing by the sprays of fern at the far end of the bridge. His 2 small, wispy-haired heads, looked so ancient that it seemed they might hold dim memories of the birth of the galaxies themselves. One lulled in sleep, the other squinted sharply at them. If his eyes weren't what they once were, they must once have been diamond cutters. I know how to read. Zaphod stuttered nervously for a moment. He gave the intricate little double nod, which is the traditional Beetlejuicean gesture of familial respect. Hi, great-granddad, he breathed. The little old figure moved closer toward them. He peered through the dim light. He thrust out a bony finger at his great-grandson. He snapped. Zaphod Beeblebrox, the last of our great line. Zaphod Beeblebrox the Nothing. The first. The Nothing, spat the figure. Zaphod hated his voice. It always seemed to him to screech like fingernails across a blackboard of what he liked to think of as his soul. He shifted awkwardly in his seat. Yeah, he muttered. Look, I'm really sorry about the flowers. I meant to send them along, but, the shop was fresh out of wreaths, and, you forgot, snapped Zaphod Beeblebrox the 4th. Well, too busy. Never think of other people. The living are all the same. 2 minutes, Zaphod, whispered Ford in an odd whisper. Here, 1 second. I will be right back. Okay, where was I? Zaphod fidgeted nervously. Yeah, But I did mean to send them, he said. And I'll write to my great-grandmother as well, just as soon as we get out of this. Your great-grandmother, mused the gaunt little figure to himself. Yeah, said Zaphod. How's she? Tell you what, I'll go and see her, but first we've just got to... Your late great-grandmother and I are very well, rasped Zaphod Beeblebrox the Fourth. Oh, but very disappointed in you, young Zaphod. Yeah, well, Zaphod felt strangely powerless to take charge of this conversation. And Ford's heavy breathing at his side told him that the seconds were ticking away fast. The noise and the shaking had reached terrifying proportions. He saw Trillian's and Arthur's faces, white and unblinking in the gloom. Great-grandfather, we've been following your progress with considerable despondency. Yeah, look, just at the moment, you see. Not to say content. Could you sort of listen for a moment? I mean, what exactly are you doing with your life? I'm being attacked by a Vogon fleet, cried Zaphon. It was an exaggeration, but it was his only opportunity so far of getting the basic point of the exercise across. Doesn't surprise me in the least, said the little old figure with a shrug. Only it's happening right now, you see, insisted Zaphod feverishly. And the spectral ancestor nodded, picked up the cup Arthur Dent had brought in, and looked at it with interest. Great-granddad, did you know, interrupted the ghostly figure, fixing Zaphod with a stern look, that Betelgeuse 5 has now developed a very slightly eccentricity in its orbit? And Zaphod didn't, and found the information hard to concentrate on, what with all the noise and the imminence of death and so on. No, look, he said. Me spinning in my grave, barked the ancestor. Sounds like my ancestors. He slammed the cup down and pointed a quivering stick-like see-through finger at Zaphod. Your fault, he screeched. 1:30, muttered Ford, his head in his hands. Yeah, look, great-granddad, can you actually help? Because... Help! Exclaimed the old man as if he'd been asked for a weasel. Yeah, help, like, now, because otherwise... Help! Repeated the old man as if he'd been asked for a lightly grilled weasel in a bun with french fries. He stood amazed. You go swanning your way around the galaxy with your, the ancestor waved a contemptuous hand, with your disreputable friends, too busy to put flowers on my grave. Plastic ones would have been quite appropriate from you, but no. Too busy, too modern, too skeptical, till you suddenly find yourself in a bit of a fix and come over suddenly, all astrally minded. He shook his head carefully so as not to disturb the slumber of the other one, which was already becoming restive. Well, I don't know, young Zaphod, he continued. I'll have to think about this one. 1:10, said Ford hollowly. Zaphod Beeblebrox the Fourth peered at him curiously. Why does that man keep talking in numbers? He said. Those numbers, said Zaphod tersely, are the time we've got left to live. Oh, said his great-grandfather. He grunted to himself. Doesn't apply to me, of course, he said, and moved off to a dimmer recess of the bridge in search of something else to poke around at. Zaphod felt he was teetering on the edge of madness and wondered if he shouldn't just jump over and have done with it. Great-grandfather, he said, it applies to us. We are still alive, and we are about to lose our lives. Good job, too. What? What use is your life to anyone? When I think of what you've made of it, The phrase pig's ear comes irresistibly to mind. But I was president of the galaxy, man. Huh? Muttered his ancestor. And what kind of a job is that for Beeblebrox? Hey, what? Only president, of the whole galaxy? Conceited little mega puppy. Zaphod blinked in bewilderment. Hey, what are you at, man? I mean, great-grandfather? The hunched-up little figure stalked up to his great-grandson and tapped him sternly on the knee. This had the effect of reminding Zaphod that he was talking to a ghost because he didn't feel a thing. You know, and I know, what being president means, young Zaphod. You know because you've been it. I know because I'm dead, and it gives one such a wonderfully uncluttered perspective. We have a saying up here. Life is wasted on the living. Yeah, said Zaphod bitterly. Very good. Very deep. Right now, I need aphorisms. Like, I need holes in my head. 50 seconds, grunted Ford Prefect. Where was I? Said Zaphod Beeblebrox IV. Pontificating, said Zaphod Beeblebrox. Ah, yes. Can this guy, muttered Ford quietly to Zaphod, actually, in fact, help us? Nobody else can, whispered Zaphod. Ford nodded despondently. Zaphod, the ghost was saying, you became president of the galaxy for a reason. Have you forgotten? Could we go into this later? Have you forgotten? Insisted the ghost. Yeah, of course I forgot. I had to forget. They screen your brain when you get the job, If they'd found my head full of tricksy ideas, I'd have been right out on the streets again with nothing but a fat pension, a secretarial life, and a fleet of ships and a couple of slit throats. Ah, nodded the ghost in satisfaction. Then you do remember. He paused for a moment. Good, he said, and the noise stopped. 48 seconds, said Ford. He looked up again at his watch and tapped it. He looked up. Hey, the noise has stopped, he said. A mischievous twinkle gleamed in the ghost's hard little eyes. I've slowed down time for a moment, he said. Just for a moment, you understand. I would hate you to miss all I have to say. No, you listen to me. You see-through old bat, said Zaphod, leaping out of his chair. Thanks for stopping time and all that. Great, terrific, wonderful. But B, no thanks for the homily, right? I don't know what this great thing I'm meant to be doing is, and it looks to me as if I was supposed not to know. And I resent that, right? The old me knew, the old me cared. Fine. So far so good. Except that the old me cared so much that he actually got inside his own brain, my own brain, and locked off the bits that knew and cared, because if I knew and cared, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to go and be president, and I wouldn't be able to steal this ship, which must be the important thing. But this former self of mine killed himself off, didn't he? By changing my brain. Okay, that was his choice. This new me has its own choices to make, and by a strange coincidence, those choices involve not knowing and not caring about this big number. Whatever it is. That's what he wanted, that's what he got. Except this old self of mine tried to leave himself in control, leaving orders for me and the bit of my brain he locked off. I don't want to know. And I don't want to hear them. That's my choice. I'm not going to be anybody's puppet, particularly not my own. Zaphod banged on the console in fury, oblivious to the dumbfounded looks he was attracting. The old me is dead, he raved. Killed himself. The dead shouldn't hang about trying to interfere with the living. And yet you summoned me up to help you out of this scrape, said the ghost. Ah, said Zaphod, sitting down again. Well, that's different, isn't it? He grinned at Trillian weakly. Zaphod rasped the apparition. I think the only reason I waste my breath on you is that being dead, I don't have any other use for it. Okay, said Zaphod. Why don't you tell me what the big secret is? Try me. Zaphod, you knew when you were president of the galaxy, as did Yuden ranks before you, and that the president is nothing, a cipher. Somewhere in the shadows behind is another man, being, something with ultimate power. That man or being or something, you must find the man who controls the galaxy. And we suspect others, possibly the entire universe. Why? Why? Exclaimed an astonished ghost. Why? Look around you, lad. Does it look to you as if it's in very good hands? It's all right. The old ghost glowered at him. I will not argue with you. You will simply take this ship, this improbability drive ship, to where it is needed. You will do it. Don't think you can escape your purpose. The improbability field controls you. You are in its grip. What's this? And he was standing, tapping at one of the terminals of Eddie, the shipboard computer. Zaphod told him. What's it doing? It is trying, said Zaphod with wonderful restraint, to make tea. Good, said his great-grandfather. I approve of that. Now, Zaphod, he said, turning and wagging a finger at him, I don't know if you are really capable of succeeding in your job. I think you will not be able to avoid it. However, I am too long dead and too tired to care as much as I did. The principal reason I am helping you now is that I couldn't bear the thought of you and your modern friends slouching about up here. Understood? Yeah, thanks a bundle. Oh, and Zaphod. Yeah. If you ever find you need help again, if you're in trouble and need a hand out of a tight corner, yeah, please don't hesitate to get lost. And within the space of 1 second, a bolt of light flashed from the wizened old ghost's hands to the computer. The ghost vanished. The bridge filled with billowing smoke, and the heart of gold leapt in unknown distance through the dimensions of space and time. Chapter 4. 10 light years away. Gag Halfront jacked up his smile by several notches as he watched the picture on his vision screen relayed across the sub-ether from the bridge of the Vogon ship. He saw the final shreds of the Heart of Gold's force shield ripped away, and the ship itself vanished in a puff of smoke. Good, he thought. The end of the last stray survivors of the demolition he had ordered on the planet Earth, he thought. The final end of this dangerous to the psychiatric profession and submersive also to the psychiatric profession experiment to find the question to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, he thought. There would be some celebration with his fellows tonight. And in the morning, they would meet again, their unhappy, bewildered, and highly profitable patients secure in the knowledge that the meaning of life would not now be, once and for all, well and truly sorted out, he thought. Family's always embarrassing, isn't it? Said Ford to Zaphod as the smoke began to clear. He paused, he looked about. Where's Zaphod? He said. Arthur and Trillian looked about blankly. They were pale and shaken, didn't know where Zaphod was. Marvin, said Ford. Where's Zaphod? A moment later he said, Where's Marvin? The robot's corner was empty. The ship was utterly silent. It lay in thick black space. Occasionally it rocked and swayed. Every instrument was dead. Every vision screen was dead. They consulted the computer. It said, I have been temporarily closed to all communication. Meanwhile, here's some light music. They turned off the light music. They searched every corner of the ship in increasing bewilderment and alarm. Everywhere was dead and silent. Nowhere was there any trace of Zaphod or Marvin. One of the last areas they checked was a small bay in which the Nutrimatic machine was located. On the delivery plate of the Nutramatic drink synthesizer was a small tray on which sat 3 bone china cups and saucers, a bone china jug of milk, a silver teapot full of the best tea Arthur had ever tasted, and a small printed note saying, "Wait." Chapter 5. Ursa Minor Beta is, some say, one of the most appalling places in the known universe. Although it is excruciatingly rich, horrifyingly sunny, and more full of wonderfully exciting people than a pomegranate is of pips, it can hardly be insignificant that when a recent edition of Plebeian magazine headlined an article with the words, "When you are tired of Ursa Minor Beta, you are tired of life," the suicide rate there quadrupled overnight. Not that there are any nights on Ursa Minor Beta. It is a West Zone planet, which by an inexplicable and somewhat suspicious freak of topography consists almost entirely of subtropical coastline. By an equally suspicious freak of temporal relostatics, it is nearly always Saturday afternoon, just before the beach bars close. No adequate explanation for this has been forthcoming from the dominant life forms on Ursa Minor Beta, who spend most of their time attempting to achieve spiritual enlightenment by running around swimming pools and inviting investigation officials from the Galactic Geotemporal Control Board to have a nice diurnal anomaly. There's only one city on Ursa Minor... Wait, hold up. Okay, I thought for a second my phone was dying, but it is not. Okay, there's only one city on Ursa Minor Beta, and that is only called a city because the swimming pools are slightly thicker on the ground than elsewhere. If you approach Light City by air, and there's no other way of approaching it, no roads, no port, no facilities. If you don't fly, they don't want to see you. In Light City, you will see why it has this name. Here the sun shines brightest of all, glittering on the swimming pools, shimmering on the white, palm-lined boulevards, glistening on the healthy bronze specks moving up and down them, gleaming off the villas, the hazy air pads, the beach bars, and so on. Most particularly, it shines on a building, a tall, beautiful building consisting of 2 30-story white towers connected by a bridge halfway up their length. The building is the home of a book and was built here on the proceeds of an extraordinary copyright lawsuit fought between the book's editors and a breakfast cereal company. The book is a guidebook, a travel book. It is one of the most remarkable, certainly the most successful books ever to come out of the great publishing corporations of Ursa Minor, more popular than Life Begins at 550, better seller than The Big Bang Theory, A Personal View by Eccentrica, Columbus, The Triple Beast Horror of Eroticon 6, and more controversial than Ulan Khulufid's latest blockbusting title, Everything You Never Wanted to Know About Sex But Have Been Forced to Find Out. And in many of the more relaxed civilizations on the outer eastern rim of the galaxy, it has long supplanted the great Encyclopedia Galactica as the standard repository of all knowledge and wisdom, for though it has many omissions and contains much that is apocryphal or at least wildly inaccurate, it scores over the older, more pedestrian work in 2 important respects. First, it is slightly cheaper, and secondly, it has the words "Don't Panic" printed. Oh, I realized that accidentally. There. Perfect. Printed in large, friendly letters on its cover. It looks like this. Alright. It is, of course, that invaluable companion for all those who want to see the marvels of the known universe for less than 30 Altarian dollars a day, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you stood with your back to the main entrance lobby of the guide offices, assuming you had landed by now and freshened up with a quick dip and shower, and then walked east, you would pass along the leafy shade of Life Boulevard, be amazed by the pale golden color of the beaches stretching away to your left, astounded by the mind surfers floating carelessly along 2 feet above the waves as if this was nothing special, surprised and eventually slightly irritated by the giant palm trees that hum tuneless nothings throughout the daylight hours, in other words, continuously. If you then walked to the end of Life Boulevard, you would enter the Lalamatine district of shops, bolo trees, and pavement cafes, where the Umbatons come to relax after a hard afternoon's relaxation on the beach. The Lalamatine district is one of those very few areas which doesn't enjoy a perpetual Saturday afternoon. It enjoys instead the cool of a perpetual early Saturday evening. Behind it lie the nightclubs. If on this particular day, afternoon, stretch of the evening time, call it what you will, you had approached the second pavement cafe on the right, you would have seen the usual crowd of Umbatons, chatting, drinking, looking very relaxed and casually glancing at each other's watches to see how expensive they were. You would also have seen a couple of rather disheveled-looking hitchhikers from Algol, who had recently arrived on an Arcturan megafreighter aboard which they had been roughing it for a few days. And they were angry and bewildered to discover that here, within sight of the Hitchhiker's Guide, building itself a simple glass of fruit juice cost the equivalent of over 60 Altarian dollars. Sell out, one of them said bitterly. If at that moment you had then looked at the next table, you would have seen Zaphod Beeblebrock sitting and looking very startled and confused. The reason for this confusion was that 5 seconds earlier he had been sitting on the bridge of the starship Heart of Gold. Absolute sellout, said the voice again. Zaphod looked nervously out of the corners of his eyes at the 2 disheveled hitchhikers at the next table. Where the hell was he? How had he got there? Where was his ship? His hand felt the arm of the chair on which he was sitting, and then the table in front of him. They seemed solid enough. He sat very still. How can they sit and write a guide for hitchhikers in a place like this? Continued the voice. I mean, look at it. Look at it. Zaphod was looking at it. Nice place, he thought. But where and why? He fished in his pockets for his 2 pairs of sunglasses. In the same pocket, he felt a hard, smooth, unidentified lump of very heavy metal. He pulled it out and looked at it. He blinked at it in surprise. Where had he got that? He returned it to his pocket and put on the sunglasses, annoyed to discover that the metal object had scratched one of the lenses. Nevertheless, he felt much more comfortable with them on. They were a double pair of Jujanta 200 super chromatic peril-sensitive sunglasses, which had been specially designed to help people develop a relaxed attitude to danger. At the first hint of trouble, they turn totally black, and thus prevent you from seeing anything that might alarm you. Apart from the scratch, the lenses were clear. He relaxed, but only a little bit. The angry hitchhiker continued to glare at his monstrously expensive fruit juice. Worst thing that ever happened to the guide moving to Ursa Minor Beta, he grumbled. They've all gone soft, you know. I've even heard that they've created a whole electronically synthesized universe in one of their offices so they can go and research stories during the day and still go to parties in the evening. Not that day and evening mean much in this place. Ursa Minor Beta thought Zaphod. At least he knew where he was now. He assumed that this must be his great-grandfather's doing, but why? Much to his annoyance, a thought popped into his mind. It was very clear and very distinct, and he had now come to recognize these thoughts for what they were. His instinct was to resist them. They were the preordained promptings from the dark and locked-off parts of his mind. He sat still and ignored the thought furiously. It nagged at him. He ignored it. It nagged at him. He ignored it. It nagged at him. He gave into it. What the hell, he thought. Go with the flow. He was too tired, confused, and hungry to resist. He didn't even know what the thought meant. Chapter 6. Hello, yes. Megadodo Publications, home of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the most totally remarkable book in the whole of the known universe. Can I help you? Said the large pink-winged insect into one of the 70 phones lined up along the vast chrome expanse of the reception desk in the foyer of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy offices. It fluttered its wings and rolled its eyes. It glared at all the grubby people cluttering up the foyer like that, soiling the carpets and leaving dirty hand marks on the upholstery. It adored working for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It just wished there was some way of keeping all the hitchhikers away. They weren't they meant to be hanging around dirty spaceports or something? It was certain that it had read something somewhere in the book about the importance of hanging around dirty spaceports. Unfortunately, most of them seemed to come and hang around in this nice, clean, shiny foyer immediately after hanging around in extremely dirty spaceports, and all they ever did was complain. It shivered its wings. What? It said into the phone. Yes, I passed your message to Mr. Zarnavoop, but I'm afraid he's too cool to see you right now. He's on an intergalactic cruise. It waved a petulant tentacle at one of the grubby people who was angrily trying to engage its attention. The petulant tentacle directed the angry person to look at the notice on the wall to its left and not to interrupt an important phone call. Yes, said the insect. He's in his office, but he's on an intergalactic cruise. Thank you so much for calling. It slammed down the phone. Read the notice, it said to the angry man who was trying to complain about one of the more ludicrous and dangerous pieces of misinformation contained in the book. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is an indispensable companion to all those who are keen to make sense of life in an infinitely complex and confusing universe. For though it cannot hope to be useful or informative on all matters, it does at least make the reassuring claim that where it is inaccurate, it is at least definitively inaccurate. In cases of major discrepancy, it's always reality that's got it wrong. This was the gist of the notice. It said the guide is definitive. Reality is frequently inaccurate. This has led to some interesting consequences. For instance, when the editors of the guide were sued by the families of those who had died as a result of taking the entry on the planet Troll literally, it said, ravenous bug-bladder beasts often make a very good meal for visiting tourists, instead of ravenous bug-bladder beasts often make a very good meal of visiting tourists. They claimed that the first version of the sentence was more aesthetically pleasing. summoned a qualified poet to testify under oath that beauty was truth beauty, and hoped thereby to prove that the guilty party in this case was life itself for failing to be either beautiful or true. The judges concurred, and in a moving speech held that life itself was in contempt, of course, and duly confiscated it from all those there present before going off to enjoy a pleasant evening's ultra golf. Zaphod Beeblebrox entered the foyer. He strode up to the insect receptionist. "Okay," he said. "Where's Zonawoop? Get me Zonawoop." "Excuse me, sir," said the insect icily. It did not care to be addressed in this manner. "Zonawoop, get him right. Get him now." "Well, sir," snapped the fragile little creature, "if you could be a little cool about it." "Look," said Zaphod, "I'm up here with cool, okay? I am so amazingly cool, you could keep a sight of me in me for a month. I am so hip, I have difficulty seeing over my pelvis. Now will you move before I blow it?" "Well, if you'd let me explain, sir," said the insect, tapping the most petulant of all the tentacles at its disposal. "I'm afraid that isn't possible right now, as Mr. Zonawoop is on an intergalactic cruise." "Hell," thought Zaphod, "when's he going to be back?" he said. "Back, sir? He's in his office." Zaphod paused while he tried to sort this particular thought out in his mind. He didn't succeed. This cat's on an intergalactic cruise, in his office. He leaned forward, gripped the tapping tentacle. "Listen, Three Eyes," he said, "don't you try to out-weird me. I get stranger things than you free with my breakfast cereal." "Well, just who do you think you are, honey?" flounced the insect, quivering its wings in rage. "Zaphod Beeblebrox or something." "Count the heads," said Zaphod in a low rasp. The insect blinked at him. It blinked at him again. "You are Zaphod Beeblebrox?" it squeaked. "Yeah," said Zaphod, "but don't shout it out, or they'll all want one." "The Zaphod Beeblebrox?" "No, just a Zaphod Beeblebrox. Didn't you hear? I come in 6 packs. The insect rattled its tentacles together in agitation. "But, sir," it squealed, "I just heard on the sub-ether radio report that you were dead." "Yeah, that's right," said Zaphod. "I just haven't stopped moving yet. Now, where do I find Zonawoop?" "Well, sir, his office is on the 15th floor, but he's on an intergalactic cruise." Yeah, how do I get to him?" "The newly installed Sirius Cybernetics Corporation Happy Vertical People Transporters are in the far corner, sir. But, sir," Zaphod was turning to go. He turned back. "Yeah," he said. "Can I ask you why you want to see Mr. Zonawoop?" "Yeah," said Zaphod, who was unclear on this point himself. "I told myself I had to." "Come again, sir?" Zaphod leaned forward conspiratorially. "I just materialized out of thin air in one of your cafes," he said, "as a result of an argument with the ghost of my great-grandfather. No sooner had I got there than my former self, the one that operated on my brain, popped in my head and said, 'Go see Zonawoop.' I have never heard of the cat. That is all I know, and that and the fact that I've got to find the man who rules the universe." He winked. "Mr. Beeblebrox, sir," said the insect in awed wonder. "You're so weird. You should be in movies." "Yeah," said Zaphod, patting the thing on a glittering pink wing. "And you, baby, should be in real life." I'm sorry, that got me. The insect paused for a moment to recover from its agitation and then reached out a tentacle to answer a ringing phone. A metal hand restrained it. "Excuse me," said the owner of the metal hand in a voice that would have made an insect of a more sentimental disposition collapse in tears. This was not such an insect, and it couldn't stand robots. "Yes, sir," it snapped. "Can I help you?" "I doubt it," said Marvin. "Well, in that case, if you'll just excuse me." 6 of the phones were now ringing. A million things awaited the insect's attention. "No one can help me," intoned Marvin. "Yes, sir, well, not that anyone's tried, of course." The restraining metal hand fell limply by Marvin's side, his head hung forward very slightly. "Is that so?" the insect said tartly. "Hardly worth anyone's while to help a menial robot, is it?" "I'm sorry, sir, where's the percentage in being kind or helpful to a robot if it doesn't have any gratitude circuits?" "And you don't have any," said the insect, who didn't seem to be able to drag itself out of this conversation. "I've never had occasion to find out," Marvin informed it. "Listen, you miserable heap of maladjusted metal. Aren't you going to ask me what I want?" The insect paused, its long, thin tongue darted out and licked its eyes, and darted back again. "Is it worth it?" it asked. "Is anything," said Marvin immediately. "What do you want?" "I'm looking for someone." "Who?" hissed the insect. "Zaphod Beeblebrox," said Marvin. "He's over there." The insect shook with rage. It could hardly speak. "Then why did you ask me?" it screamed. "I just wanted something to talk to," said Marvin. "What? Pathetic, isn't it?" With a grinding of gears, Marvin turned and trundled off. He caught up with Zaphod. Approaching the elevator, Zaphod spun around in astonishment. "Hey, Marvin," he said. "Marvin, how did you get in here?" Marvin was forced to say something which came very hard to him. "I don't know," he said, "but one moment I was sitting in your ship feeling very depressed, and the next moment I was standing here feeling utterly miserable and improbability field, I expect." "Yeah," said Zaphod. "I expect my great-grandfather sent you along to keep me company. Thanks a bundle, Grandad," he added to himself under his breath. "So, how are you?" he said aloud. "Oh, fine," said Marvin. "If you happen to like being me, which personally I don't." Yeah, said Zaphod as the elevator doors opened. "Hello," said the elevator sweetly. "I am to be your elevator for this trip to the floor of your choice. I have been designed by the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation to take you, the visitor, to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, into their offices. If you enjoy your ride, which will be swift and pleasurable, then you may care to experience some of the other elevators which have recently been installed in the offices of the Galactic Tax Department, Boobaloo Baby Foods, and the Syrian State Mental Hospital, where many ex-Sirius Cybernetics Corporation executives will be delighted to welcome your visits. Sympathy and happy tales of the outside world." "Yeah," said Zaphod, stepping into it. "What else do you do besides talk?" "I go up," said the elevator, "or down." "Good," said Zaphod. "We're going up." "Or down," the elevator reminded him. "Yeah, okay, up, please." There was a moment of silence. "Down's very nice," suggested the elevator hopefully. "Oh, yeah? Super." "Good," said Zaphod. "Now will you take us up?" "May I ask you," inquired the elevator in its sweetest, most reasonable voice, if you've considered all the possibilities that down might offer you. Zaphod knocked one of his heads against the inside wall. He didn't need this, he thought to himself. This, of all things, he had no need of. He hadn't asked to be here. If he was asked at this moment where he would like to be, he would probably have said he would like to be lying on the beach with at least 50 beautiful women and a small team of experts working out new ways they could be nice to him, which was his usual reply. To this, he would probably have added something passionate on the subject of food. One thing he didn't want to be doing was chasing after the man who ruled the universe, who was only doing a job which he might as well keep at, because if it wasn't him, it would only be someone else. Most of all, he didn't want to be standing in an office block arguing with an elevator. Like what other possibilities? He said wearily. Well, the voice trickled on like honey on biscuits. There's a basement, the microfiles, the heating system, or... It paused. Nothing particularly exciting, it admitted, but they are alternatives. Holy Zarquan, muttered Zaphon. Did I ask for an existential elevator? He beat his fist against the wall. What's the matter with this thing? He spat. It doesn't want to go up, said Marvin simply. I think it's afraid. Afraid? Cried Zaphod. Of what? Heights? An elevator that's afraid of heights? No, said the elevator miserably. Of the future. The future, exclaimed Zaphod. What does the wretched thing want? A pension plan? At that moment, a commotion broke out in the reception hall behind them. From the walls around them came the sound of suddenly active machinery. We can all see into the future, whispered the elevator in what sounded like terror. That's part of our programming. And Zaphod looked out of the elevator. An agitated crowd had gathered around the elevator area, pointing and shouting. Every elevator in the building was coming down very fast. He ducked back in. Marvin, he said, just get this elevator to go up, will you? We've got to get to Zonawoot. Why? Asked Marvin dolefully. I don't know, said Zaphod, but when I find him, you'd better have a very good reason for me wanting to see him. Modern elevators are strange and complex entities. The ancient electric winch and maximum capacity 8 persons jobs bear as much relation to a serious cybernetics corporation, Happy Vertical People Transporter, as a packet of mixed nuts does to the entire west wing of the Syrian State Mental Hospital. This is because they operate on the curious principle of defocused temporal perception. In other words, they have the capacity to see dimly into the immediate future, which enables the elevator to be on the right floor to pick you up even before you knew you wanted it, thus eliminating all the tedious chatting, relaxing, and making friends that people were previously forced to do while waiting for elevators. Not unnaturally, many elevators embed with intelligence and precognition became terribly frustrated with the mindless business of going up and down and up and down, experimented briefly with the notion of going sideways as a sort of existential protest, demanded participation in the decision-making process, and finally took to squatting in basements, sulking. An impoverished hitchhiker visiting any planets in the Sirius star systems these days can pick up easy money working as a counselor for neurotic elevators. At the 15th floor, the elevator door snapped open quickly. Alright, we're going to stop here because my phone will die soon and I feel like it's a good stopping point. I will see you on the next reading. Namaste. I love you all, and I will see you soon.